For the international cooperation, at the present right now, I see there's a lot of good efforts. For example, Interpol, it builds a lot of good training and collaboration between different countries, mainly on developing capacities for the law enforcement and also introducing them with a different upcoming type of crimes. There's obviously needed partnership between the industry and the law enforcement and the regulator government, including the governance. So I think there's a good initiative right now with ITU and Impact, which carries that arm and that forms part of the outreach for the governance and the regulators. But I think the law enforcement would need to supplement into this particular program, which is would be benefit for the common communities in the future as well. One of the biggest advantage right now is the Convention on Cybercrime by the European Union. Okay, actually, I believe it's 43 countries have joined it right now. So it's mainly the legislation framework against the cybercrime for the international cooperation. So all the countries that joins this framework will share a common legislation that can helpful in their own jurisdiction, and also with cross-border crimes that happens in the future as well. And I'm also happy to see that Impact right now have an enrollment of 140 countries out of UN 190 countries. So that's a very big impactful as well. In the future, perhaps with the more sharing between the law enforcement and the other associations or unions that can share more case studies, which will be beneficial because we know there's a separate pockets of information sharings, like for example, financial industry, law enforcement, and maybe the IT content provider industry. So it's, right now there's separate pockets of information sharing. So in the future, if this sharing can be amalgamated in one or more it will be more fluid against cybercrime. On the understanding that different jurisdictions have different focuses on their own priority. For example, some jurisdiction may be more focused on more stringent personal data privacy, or some jurisdiction might be more focused on freedom of speech or the cultural rights, or on gambling or on pornography, on child exploitation. So this type of cross priorities, hopefully in the future, it could be more common factor between the countries, that the same focus or same priority can be reached at the same time, or agree at the same time, that in which we can really emphasize all the resources for that particular problem. So hopefully in the future it can be towards that direction instead of little pockets of different groups at the moment. Okay, the biggest challenge right now, one is to educate or bring the juries and judges up to speed with what is cybercrime. As a lot of laws in the developing country or the countries not as advanced right now, the law is still based 25 or 30 years ago, where cybercrime did not, or the word digital did not really enter the scope of the legislation. A lot of crimes like cyberbullying, online trading of pornography, cloud, mobile tapping, mobile phone tapping, all those are sort of like intangible evidence. They do not really fit with the law that they have established at that particular time. So the judges got to be literate about it, and also the jury, etc. And also, there's no court for special cybercrime cases. For example, you have traditional criminal courts or other courts that dealing with traffic, dealing with domestic violence, that type of courts. But you don't have courts that deal with cybercrime, especially focused in that area. Other things, the multi-jurisdiction problem. For example, incompatible laws between different countries. Like many years ago, there was a case involved with I Love You virus, but the suspect that was arrested was in a country that did not have the appropriate law for the prosecution. So there's incompatibility of law. And also, for prosecution of crime, there's a issue with where's the jurisdiction, where's the harm, the victim and jurisdiction. Unlike traditional crime, where the evidence usually in one place. With digital crime, all evidence could be spanned across internet. For example, data could be in multiple jurisdictions at the same time with the same piece of evidence. Also, the difficulties with anonymities and also the identification. For example, you do not really have to provide your name or validation of your accuracy of your personal information, usually on the net. That's on trusted basis. And in fact, a lot of these are untrustworthy for the criminal to provide this information. And also this is for the one side, of course, the online privacy group would say this is the advantage to them. So they built this little network of P2P sharing, like point-to-point sharing, or their own network of sophisticated messagings, their own dedicated chat rooms. So this is conducive or helpful to the society, to provide a channel of communication private. But this is also can be leveraged by criminals having their own underground network to facilitate their crime communication. So, and also the nature of crime, because once again, cybercrime is hard to trace digital footprints. The digital footprints can be fade out very quickly. Data overlap each other. If the ISP do not have a governance to preserve the data, it's very difficult to the law enforcement to obtain. There are tools to generate false evidence. There are tools to erase evidence. Training of the officers to obtain the evidence under integrity and safeguard the evidence for the future prosecution, and having the appropriate best practice on obtaining evidence is another challenge right now. Bringing this to court and demonstrating to the judge or the jury on this particular point is quite challenging right now. One thing for the role of law enforcement is always neutral and impartial and be factual. Right now, there seems to be overloading of digital crimes or crimes alleged on the cyberspace. It's inevitable. All traditional crime will involve with some type of digital evidence. For example, mobile phones, iPods. In the future, it will be maybe Google Glass. So it's inevitable the rate of forensic evidence on this type of investigation will be on the rise. So hopefully the law enforcement will add resources, learning forensics, learning the latest products, and do not give out on complexity. For example, cloud dealing with clouds, cloud forensic. Also to have plenty of exchange with the private sector to learn about the latest upcoming technology and how to leverage the private sector to give them support. For example, lot of investigation or security community who have former law enforcement in their security firm, or former regulators, former judges who have valuable experience from their government days. So this could be, once again, leverage, or the relationship could be built by existing investigator to leverage the former experience. Training is another important part. Constant training provided to the law enforcement officer, particularly the cybercrime unit, to obtain the latest tool, the latest practice, the latest standard that is subject to challenge, or that is more on a global standard. That is most important. All the process must be scientifically processed, proven, tools that they use should be tested, and also the findings should be reproducible as much as possible and also documented. Integrity cannot be sacrificed. It must be factual. So therefore, the way that they produce these evidence or the way they obtain this evidence must be meticulously documented and keep its integrity according to the latest best practice.